I'm so happy to be here, you guys. Super exciting. How was your Thanksgiving if you're in the States like I am? My Thanksgiving was awesome. We had a great time with family. I just love Thanksgiving for that reason. I think Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays just because you get to surround yourself with family and friends, good food, think about the things that you're thankful for. And man, there's so much to be thankful for in life, isn't there? I'm so thankful for a lot of different things like my family, my husband, my cats, being able to write books for a living, and also I'm thankful for you. So I just want you to know I'm very thankful for you. So if you're hopping in watching my videos, thank you so much. You mean the world to me. So I just had to say that before I jumped into today's video, which today I'm going to be talking about basically how to find and mine story ideas from family history. I am a huge history nut. I love history. And so just recently, I got a bunch of pictures from my grandma, and she had like a bunch of pictures from her ancestry and stuff. So all these pictures are like old pictures, like old. And so they're black and white and everything. And so I ended up scanning a ton of them. I'm still in the process of it. It's such a huge job. But it's been so interesting, like looking at these old pictures and thinking, man, these are my ancestors, like my relatives. Like, and some of them I have met in real life, like my great great grandpa and great great grandma on my mom's side, so my grandma's side, maternal grandma. And so it was so interesting seeing these pictures and like seeing their lives and stuff. And as we were going through it all too, we ended up finding like my great grandparents' naturalization papers. And that was super amazing because my husband, and many of you guys might know, he's from South Africa and Australia originally. So we went through the whole process of immigration and green cards and getting the citizenship, studying for the test and everything. So he's got a citizenship now too, but his it was so funny because he had naturalization papers too. And so whenever you if you come into the country and you go through the immigration process, it's super crazy because it's really cool because you get this sheet and it has your picture and it has all the information about you and says basically that you're an American citizen now. And it was so cool going through these files and pictures and everything and finding these naturalization papers because they didn't change much, but it's so cool because when I looked at it this way, so one of them came from great great grandma and great great grandpa. One of them came from Germany, and no, they both came from Germany. Okay, yeah, they both came from Germany. So it's so cool because like when it came down to it, I was showing my husband, he's like, "Oh, so that means that your grandma is a first generation American." And I'm like, "Wow. That is true." So my mom's second generation and I'm a third generation American. Like that's just so crazy when you actually see that and then you think about it. I mean, you don't really think about it until you think about it, if you know what I mean. But that was really cool. So, but going through all those pictures and family history and everything, it's so good, especially if your family, like mine, has like kept track of some of that history and kind of like stocked it up or piled it up and kind of kept track of things. It's going to be easier for you to kind of mine for story ideas as well as do ancestry research and everything, which I'm super interested in, if you can't tell. So, but anyways, another thing I want to mention before I start giving you ideas on how you can use your family history to come up with story ideas. But anyways, when I was going through these files, I also ended up finding it almost like a journal entry, but it was typed up on a typewriter by another family member. So I think they must have interviewed this great great great, I think grandma is what she was. But anyway, she basically when she was coming over from Canada, and she came over to North Dakota via a steamboat on a river. And it just was so interesting hearing her stories and how they ended up in North Dakota and a prairie fire that like got rid of their house, and like the hardships that they had to go through. And I'm just like, oh my word. And then I had this other paper that I found that was a write-up of the family coming over from Germany to Russia, and then from Russia to America. Well, first of all, Canada and then America. But he followed, like, the whole write-up was like from Germany to Russia, from Russia to Canada to America to North Dakota. So it's so interesting seeing how I got here. But it's also just interesting because like in that paper, my ancestor was talking about how Catherine the Great, she was German by descent, but she was a Russian queen. And so she ended up making it so that Germans could come into Russia. That's why there's a lot of German Russians. And also in North Dakota and the Midwest, there's a lot of German Russian heritage when it comes to the German heritage here. But anyways, I just thought that was so interesting how he talked about like Catherine the Great, and that's why his family ended up going there. And then after that, they ended up going, and things got kind of difficult there for the Germans living there. And they ended up writing home saying, is it better back home in Germany? And relatives were like, no, go to the New World. So they went to the New World, to Canada, and then somehow ended up here in North Dakota. But yeah, it was so interesting. So before I keep gushing on about family history, I just thought I would share a little bit of that just so that you can see how exciting this is. So, okay, so first of all, some different ideas that you will, tongue-tied. So some different things that you can do to find story ideas in family history is, number one, pictures. And this can be pictures like from your parents' life. This can be pictures from your grandparents. These can be pictures from great-great-grandparents or great-great-great-great, like further greats or whatnot. I just thought I'd share this with you. So a few years ago when Johan ended up immigrating, his mom sent a bunch of pictures with him. So I ended up putting them into a photo album, and some of these are from when he was little, like a cute little boy, like oh, so cute, blowing out a candle at his birthday. But sorry, I just ran up the stairs. But anyways, so some color pictures from his life when he was little, but then also some black and white images, which are super, super cool as well. Like here, like at a wedding, and I think that's his grandma and his grandpa, I think. And I mean, these are cool to see too, like war type pictures, and so interesting, like his family, they lived in South Africa. So there was like the Boer War, and I might be saying that wrong, but it's just so interesting. And then the Angola War and a bunch of different wars that happened over there that I don't really know much about, but it's so cool seeing a different side of history through these kind of pictures. Like I was saying, like marching, like that's just filled with story there, isn't it? There it is. Okay, there's one more picture that I want to show you because I was like, oh my gosh, you can tell totally South Africa, you were thinking. So when I saw this one originally, I was like, what? Being from North Dakota, you don't see this quite often. So, or anywhere in the States, you don't really see this quite often. But look at that. That's a baby zebra. Like, how cool, right? So that's kind of one thing I really love about old pictures is like, it's so easy to just be like, get these really cool ideas about story. And I know that there's some authors out there who get really good story ideas through old pictures too. And it always makes me think of like Ransom Riggs with his Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Those books I love, by the way. But it's so cool how he had found these pictures and then kind of like somehow fit them into his world and created such a cool world and characters. So that's one way that I would recommend using your family pictures is, sometime when you go to grandma's house or great grandma, grandpa, or an aunt or uncle who might have a bunch of pictures. Go and ask them if you can look through them or even scan them. Like, that's one thing that I'm doing right now. I'm on this big quest in my free time to gather all the family history so that I can put it into a book, and so that all people can end up having it. Because, you know, as time goes by, everyone gets further away, and, you know, aunts, uncles, cousins, it's just, yeah, it ends up getting further and further away, and it's harder to keep the history all together with all the people. And I just feel like that's something that everyone should have access to, right? So that's one way. Finding pictures, looking through the pictures, old pictures, new pictures, pictures you've never seen, and also family write-ups or family naturalization papers or deeds, or, you know, any papers that are old in the family too, like maybe old newspaper clippings as well. Those are always really interesting to read through and find story ideas too. Number 3 is, do you have any family members that are really good with their family trees? Like, do they have like an ancestry family tree set up online already? Like, I have really interesting, like, I had an aunt that she was like so good at keeping this family tree and has all this information, like going back to like England, where like, and England and Scotland, where I'm actually related to John Welsh, and he was like a pastor, a preacher, and it was so interesting finding out all this information. Just so cool to be like, oh my gosh, like my family was there and now they're here, and you know how we got from A to B to Z, and like in between. It makes you think and wonder about all those people, and like also how they got here, and you know, makes you start thinking about all the story possibilities that there are. I just love it. So another way that you can find story ideas is through people, you know. Talk to your grandma and your grandpa or aunt and uncles, you know, because like sadly, people are not around forever. So make sure that you talk to those people and grab the stories while you can, so that for one, you can have the stories for future generations. And two, there's so many stories there. Like, I still remember when I was little, like my grandma Doris, she's my dad's mom. So she would always tell me stories about the prairie, growing up on the prairie in North Dakota and going through the Great Depression and everything there. So I've always been searching for stories when I'm listening to other people talk about their experiences and their stories. And like, even like Johan, my husband, his family have like, they've moved from continent to continent. Like, they moved from South Africa and then they moved to Australia from there, and they packed up all their things and they moved across the ocean. And then after living in Australia for quite a few years, they ended up moving back to South Africa. So, I mean, like, there's so many stories on like immigrating to new countries. And so it's just so crazy when you hear those stories. Like, I don't know, I get like all these like questions in my head, like, okay, how can I make this into a story? So those are some ideas for you. Some ideas that you can go through and sort of mine through those ideas and those papers or pictures, or even interview people that you know, your parents, your family, or even, you know, interview friends and family, like people who might have known your great grandma, or even if you're interested in just mining story ideas that aren't really in your family history, interview someone that went to Vietnam. Interview them on what their time was like there. You're gonna get so many story ideas. But yeah, I hope that those ideas are helpful for coming up with some new story ideas. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.